Hello everyone, welcome to another Mr.Within episode. Today's episode is going to be a quick one, and the viewer is required to look at the screen to see the notes that I'm writing there. Okay. First of all, quick apologies for the additional noises. I'm just some person recording, a lecture on a balcony. Regardless of the miscellaneous sounds, I would love for the viewers to engage the content and the concepts behind this episode. So, where to begin? The whole moment is divine. And so, what does this imply? Could it imply or I should start here, I guess. What could the sentence, "the whole moment is divine," imply? This means everything. What the moment means is the outline of everything. And what divine means is unknown movement in the known. To comprehend this idea, not only do we need to wonder about the relationship Hold on, guys, I'm trying to fix the audio. Okay. Okay, let me put away the notepad. Just dive into my observations of this. I have wondered about what is the human being, and I have wondered about it through frameworks of time. I have wondered about how ancient human beings looked at the world, how modern human beings are looking at the world, and how future generations will look at the world. I have come into this realization that from the beginning of every human life, there is an awareness, a space of being prior to there being anything done to be recognized as a self. What that means is just like a tree needs, a seed needs soil to in some sense sprout from, it seems like consciousness has sprouted from a field of awareness, or our identities, our persona, whatever we are that is moving in the moment. It's as if there is an unknown space, and then something moves in this unknown space, and then it remembers how it has moved in space, and so that becomes a sort of memory's justification of meaning. You see, on some level, human beings need to have the ability to separate how their brain is happening with what the world actually is or can be. Right now, I would say we're living in this interesting time where we have 8 billion human beings and growing. There's so many human beings alive right now, and each human being harbors behind their eyes a hidden universe. It's another way of saying behind our eyes there is our own version of the world, and in front of our eyes is the version of the world which we're being in. Right? It's this, it's like one of the biggest challenges to, I would say, of a philosophical level for what it implies, the transformations of a human being going towards the future. I want to share this idea that human psychology is conditional. And as we go into the future, we're going to experience unconditional moments of it. We're going to see the behavior of human beings that will have nothing to do with an object or a subject, but in some sense the fascination of the presence of meeting the unknown. We are pretty much creatures that are using how our minds are happening as a container for the living world. There is 8 billion private Earths, versions of Earth or parallel universes of Earth. Each person who has a mind, again, they're an angle of the visible world. It's kind of like consciousness is the circumference and reality is the center, and there's so many conscious angles to the center of reality. Our inner universes are possessing the outer universe to give it meaning so that we are not alone in the void. Right? It's as if part of the human intelligence is so advanced that it is ignoring reality so it can experience free will and an illusion. Really, what has life been? It has been the spirit of invention in all dimensions. For me, it's a fascinating feeling to suddenly notice that nobody knows where we are. Nobody. if in the future aliens come down and give us an explanation of truth, it's as if nobody knows. No body, no form. Reality moves beyond form. What the mind is how the awareness to form has an ability to decide what the form will be. When I say the whole moment is divine, I am suggesting that the evolution of the human species will go towards an awakening from the linguistic simulation. When human beings realize they are not objects and subjects, a great creative freedom arises for the whole species to utilize objects and subjects. The biggest issue with life is that we're trying to survive, but we cannot associate a meaning to the survival. Like, sure, there's so many stories going around. A person could be like, the purpose of life is to drink iced tea. Like, sure, anybody can. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many ways that stories grab phenomena to in some sense solidify as the ultimate, but in reality there's so much more than language going on here. And one of the saddest things to see is how this species' potential to be an advanced explorer of its universal sector is in some sense being trapped by the cowardice of past senses of self to in some sense emerge anew in the future. On some level I feel that similar to civilizations rising and falling on planet Earth, similarly realities rise and fall for the mind of the human being. It's as if our mind is a hidden earth and many civilizations rise and fall in this mind. My approach has been to, in some sense, get the species to be able to acknowledge and discriminate between inner realms and outer realms. We push away all ideas of truth has to be matter, truth has to be material. We get rid of the game of emotions trying to possess the moment. And emotions, an emotional being shouldn't even go towards multidimensionality because they can become very gullible. Right? People don't realize this, but it's like anything that we don't look at could be a dimension of influence upon our psyche. Even Carl Jung speaks about this concept of self-sabotage, and I will be bold enough to tell the viewers I have experienced self-sabotage in many moments of my life. And when I read this thing about Carl Jung explaining how there is a shadow self and how the mind on some core level of its being has no opinion whether the person should be chaotic or ordered, but the way the personality is constructed and snowballs into the, let's say into the cultural, into the socio-psychocultural program, it's as if the ignorance to acknowledge the simultaneity of all energy within phenomena and the recognition that divinity is literally what moves matter in space. There's what else can we call it divine, right? Imagine somebody's sitting somewhere and nothing happens, and then somebody comes and says, hey man, were you experiencing a divine moment? And imagine the person's like, yes. It would be as if what divinity? Nothing moved. So you see, whether it is the human, it is the mystery of consciousness moving as the free will through the individual will, or in some sense it is something in the outer realms moving, and in some sense our inner realms responding to it. It's as if an unknown mover of any sort of known phenomena is where you can say a moment is cultivating divinity. And I would say the concept of divination, its ancient relationship with the human mind has been lost. Why? Because man dishonored the archetypes that he had given to nature. The more you go back in ancient times, the more the planet was alive for them. It wasn't just, statistics on a piece of paper that became, the filter of truth. It was in some sense that the ancient world, the ancients acknowledged the world that was alive. That means it's as if we think in the psychology of the human being, it has just been a rational, logical entity. It's no way. We were a savage animal that, in some sense, in its ability to consider or in its discovery of a possibility of envisioning the future before it actually brings it, right? It's as if the only reason right now human beings are not behaving like savage animals and killing each other is because of the advent of the mind. The human mind is so fascinating, and as I was talking about Carl Jung earlier, this concept of self-sabotage applies. Why? Because it is a suggestion that instead of a person thinking they're this, good dandelion from the beginning of their life, it's like the person in some sense awakens the true nature of a lion, right? And the person realizes that in this moment, due to the nature of the mind being dualistic, that means in every moment of our life, our chaotic self and our ordered self, and the spectrum of chaos and order behind our eyes stands as a possibility. And what we identify as our personality is what we have accepted of the spectrum before actually moving anything. Right, so it's as if I'm trying to tell the viewers that this whole time on Earth, we've been thinking we're just like, not the whole time, but we've been thinking that we're just these material entities, we're just objects moving in the space-time continuum. But in reality, what has been going on is that it is the mysteries of force. Because when a person wonders about what is an object, you see that on some level it's as if we started from an unconscious experience of how energy was being something, and now we have come to a point where we are consciously filtering our experience. It's as if this person went to this guru and was like, "Guru, I want to get enlightened," and the guru was like, "Are you willing to let go of all your memories?" And the person's like, "No way, man." And the guru's like, "All right, you're not ready to see another world." You see, there has to come a sort of detachment, and many people try detachment, and it's very strange because I would say every person that is alive in accordance to their DNA, they have a sort of disposition. Do you know? Carl Jung suggested that there is deeper dimensions to the human mind and to how the psyche is a performer in the conscious waking state. What it is that eyes open and something is moving here. We try to comprehend this movement by individualizing it, by collectivizing it, by giving it symbols, shapes. It's like, what are the options? Either nothing is moving us, either we are moving ourselves, or something else beyond us is moving us. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like humanity there isn't that many options in existence, even though the edge of the sky is endless. But really, when we look at the possibilities for the human being, the moves on the chessboard of history are not that many. The type of future we will have is dependent on what kind of human beings we have now. And if human beings enjoy the pleasantries of an artificial life, the future generations are going to hold the artificialness and sacredness. There's like this view that says we need one conscious generation of human beings living to, in some sense, change the world. But you can say also you can have one unconscious generation of human beings, in some sense, also changing the world in a way where it's as if, are we choosing to go back into the caves of de-evolution, or are we choosing to command an interstellar position for the human entity? The minds of people are very, very localized in their most immediate sensory truths. My recognition, the way if somebody's like, "All right, Mr.Within, you sound like a spiritual person, so what is the actual thing you've experienced? What is the spirituality that it's as if, what are your heart's secrets?" And I will tell you, the secret is not a secret. This is the biggest thing I realized, that truth has no secrets. But this was my experience. So think of the human being being a creature that wakes up every day, and even though it has the memories of yesterday, but it is experiencing a new simulation to every day. And at some point, it started from 2011, and it has come, up to this point. Where this is what happened. I had problems in my life. My own karma was burdening me. I felt a sort of karmic exile, a sort of, later on, I'm calling it, like, I understand now it was self-sabotage, but I understand that back, like, when I was younger, I felt not only that the world couldn't see me, but I also felt that the world didn't care for how the human being behaved. Like, human beings care for how the human being behaves, but the world didn't care. I honestly had that view. And I came to this realization sitting on a rock in the middle of this river, and I was like, man, my problems and everything. And for a moment, I don't know how, like a glitch in some sort of simulation matrix of reality, I suddenly realized every question I ask myself, my mind generates a new answer. So it was as if I was sitting on that rock and I was like, who am I? My mind created an answer. And then suddenly I asked the question again from myself, my mind created a different answer. And I suddenly realized that what the mind is doing is responding, you know? It's as if our minds are the first responders to any situation based on where they are. Right? The mind of the human being, it is something that isn't taught and is really left in nature's tutelage. But I will tell you that the mind of the human being is an advanced technology. And the moment human beings can treat what they are as a technology, and for a moment consider that we are unknown users of a known technology that has appeared as, in some sense, the ability to mobilize and navigate an organism's position. We are not just our DNA, we are that which moves it. Reality is never what we see, it is that which is moving. You know, it's as if, like, you know, you see a great film and people are like, I love the characters and the actors, right? And, you know, the person's waiting to see, it's like, when will this person love the director? You know, it's as if from where did that universe, step out to me? The film industry is so beautiful on some level, even though I don't like its structure now. But to me, the concept, the idea of human beings working together to, in some sense, release the outer realms into the inner realms, see the fascinating thing, and really what the secret, I would say, of genius is. The secret of genius is the effort that enters a new, uncharted territory, and in some sense, anybody who, in some sense, finds the new, a genius has found you. Do you see what I'm saying? It's as if, like, the possibility of ways that our species can move, and we didn't know. This whole time we have been limiting ourselves to some object oriented in a story of a character of a self. It's like, when did letters replace our soul? You know? And so there's something here that I would say is the unknown presence of nature. And mid-questioning myself on that rock in the middle of the river, I realized I don't know, in all the years I have lived on this planet, I still don't know what is looking through my eyes, because it cannot be a memory. The memories come and go. It cannot be a visual imagination. The inner realms come and go, right? It can't be the outer realms, because the body is changing. Right? So in some sense, it is only left in the station of space. As if this whole time, we have been thinking of the body, and the New Age community's been like, out-of-body experiences, bro. But I'll tell you, how about an out-of-mind experience? How about a recognition that beyond the storylines to the free will's endeavor, the unknown presence of a living universe is here. And this is the divinity, dear listeners. Divinity cannot happen unless you realize the world was alive before you could. You see, there was a time I searched for freedom. But deep down, I've always had this feeling that if a person is indecent to their, let's say, principal universal philosophy, their originally held worldview, it's like that indecency denies the authorization. It's as if, imagine somebody, got angry at someone, at a, let's
let's say a bunch of people are standing behind an ATM and one person got mad at another person, and later on that person got mad, and next time he went to an ATM he just felt this sort of sadness and some guilt or something, you know. And that's very fascinating, that our decisions are creating the memories that our future self has to work with, you know. They say, you know, love yourself, you know, and it's like, if you don't, you know, your future self's gonna be like, man, another memory where I'm seeing my own inefficiencies. Like, what the fuck? So the beginning idea is that if the world is not alive, there is no permission for the mind to move in a new way. I would say the secret of shamanism was this: the secret of all people who engaged divinity was that they trusted the unknown. They trusted the unseen. Why? Because what moves the human body is invisible, and what moves the body of the world could be invisible. In some sense, you know, I can draw it out here, that it's as if there are three positions or dimensions. Life moves through and as. We have a human being. We have the dimension of the body, which is another way of saying this is the known dimension. We have the mind. The mind, I would right now just write a bridging dimension. Some people feel that the mind is something they own, but actually your mind is a quality of how you are being space. Okay? We are reaching a point in, I would say, metaphysical philosophy, in the branch of metaphysics for philosophy, where we are wondering about what is moving the physics, and it's like we have an analysis of matter, but now there can be a consideration of an analysis of space. We have the soul, which is the unknown dimension. Another trio that's important to consider is this notion of self, species, world. These are very important trios as in categorizations of the dimensions of the human being. When I say the body and the known dimension, what I mean is that Okay. Anyways, I'll just continue. Let me see how I can weave the summary up to this point. Pretty much, imagine a human being opens its eyes in the world and wonders, okay, what's going on here? The reality has a sort of divergence pattern between outer realm's relationship with the inner realm and the inner realm's relationship with the outer realm. Then at the same time, we have classifications in, let's say, the outer realms that we have ourself, which is a point of interest. We have the species, all the other senses of self, human selves that are out there, that's a point of interest. And in some sense, the whole world, its totality being a point of interest. As if we, the future generations, are going to be like, okay, it's not just the self, in a world, it's not just a species in a world, it could also be a world in the self. A world is moving the self, it could be many worlds are moving the species. You see, many forces are at work here. And our ignorance to want everything to have a sort of dualistic containment of meaning, it's as if like the person's like, who is the most evil person? Perhaps the person that believes in the concept of evil. And here's the challenge. If a person believes in the concept of good, you can't know it without the concept of evil. And if you believe in the concept of evil, you can't know it with the concept of good. It's another way of saying that the other side of the coin is necessary to comprehend the nature of the one side of the coin. That means all good and bad people have fathomed both possibilities. Our inner realms are neither good or bad. It is what sort of ideological construct behind the person's eyes the person acts upon, which in some sense karma takes the motives seriously. Because on some level, the true relationship of the mind with existence is that unless it can accept the existence of itself, the existence of its species, and the existence of its world, in some sense it cannot be freed by it. That means I'll use myself as an example. If I am at the end of this life, if I am incapable of letting go of my desire of wanting to see, how an advanced civilization is possible in the shortest sufficient time, what is the most advanced way something advanced can happen, right? It's as if I want to live truly wisely, I should be capable of detaching from this idea. And believe it or not, I started from there. This is something that I actually don't know if it's even possible for me to share with people, but I'll attempt it here. It's as if I would consider myself as a human being that tasted anguish before salvation. And what that means is that my mind went to a point where it stopped existing to itself, as a species, as a world, and it was just being before anything can be. And when you experience that, there is this sort of poetically, it's like the laughter and the tears of the gods find you. The laughter and the tears of greater dimensions find you, in the sense that the person realizes infinity cannot die, yet the finite was never here, technically. This is this feeling I have, which, there was a time I would get offended, and still sometimes based on the personality I entertain in the moment, right? There is a sort of, emotion, but on some level I have concluded that if the body cannot lead towards a sort of beyond the body work, that means if we just live as bodies and not realize the value of our minds, and if we don't start the great dance of, let's say, 8 billion minds in the void, the great march of knowledge into the unknown, it's as if, to me, true educational systems should be hilariously themed with a sort of kind of just like Game of Thrones, there was the Night's Watch. Right? Similarly, it's as if beyond the walls that protect the realms of men, it's as if beyond the knowledge that contains the realms of men, it's like the educational system should be, in some sense, creating true explorers of life's meaning. Right? That means an advanced civilization realizes what is the greatest value in the moment. And if it is a multidimensional system, it is a strategy that activates all the abilities on those, of that system. That means it's as if we don't want to just, if we consider there's a body, there's a mind, a soul, the person's ego, imagine, reached a sort of kind of divinity point where the ego was like, it's like, what would my greatest, version be, right? Imagine an ego not corrupted by power, but imagine, an ego fascinated by greatness. If that shift happens and the greatness is realized to be the greatness of everybody, that means the smartest people, it's how Lao Tzu says it actually. Lao Tzu says after the leader's task is done, the people would say we did it ourselves. What does that mean? That means the leader led the moment but did not want to claim the moment's victory so the moment could realize its own victory. You see, that's really true greatness. To be able to advance the visible and visible. If somebody says, Mr. Within, do you acknowledge a world soul? I'll be like, yes, I do. If somebody says, Mr. Within, do you acknowledge that divinity is God? I would say that the concept of God is divine. But true divinity is how the conceivable remembers the inconceivable. So true divinity is not conditional. That means it's as if beyond the shaman that spoke to the forest, there was something more. It's really the preference of a universal being to individualize. Imagine right now we realize that behind every person's mind, we're all experiencing the same moment of being. That means imagine suddenly a species realized the world is a simulation from a single moment, a singularian truth. In the chat section, somebody says, Mr. Within, what is Dharma Mega Samadhi? Patanjali mentions it in the Patanjali Sutras, but does not define it. I don't know exactly what Patanjali is referring to, but technically all the mystics, there isn't that many options. So it's like I could say this is what I feel. The way I have experienced Samadhi has been as if I have realized my whole moment is being before anything. So right now as I'm speaking, it's like me saying right now, like as the listeners are hearing my voice, I am not my voice right now. My voice is happening within the moment that I'm being. When I say you are the whole moment, that's a recognition of where the concept of oneness comes from. On some level in the outer realms, I acknowledge that I am, a candle in a dark cosmos, and the candle is going to melt, and, human beings are going to, in some sense, fade out as they journey through time. So on some level, it's our performance. Technically, the species is living in caves right now, but we're living in ideological caves. And when there comes an ability of an advanced humanity to acknowledge itself beyond subjects, there also comes the accompanying compassion, that great psychology. Right? The idea is that because we don't feel free, we suffer. Right? But samadhi is a recognition that the one who is suffering doesn't exist. Samadhi is like realizing there's nothing here, but something is being here, you know. I would say Maha Samadhi is another way of saying before you die, you've become the unknown that moves the known, and the unknown technically cannot die. It's not conditioned. It's another way of saying the universal will moves you. So technically the Samadhi is automated. Like all these people who are like, how did these yogis meditate? I'm telling you, it's literally you trust your intuition, and your intuition reveals content, and eventually the one that is trusting the world, the sense of self, in some sense, I would say it fades from it's as if you realize something was never there, right? It's as if the one who was suffering and the one who had desires for pleasure, it's like it doesn't exist. It's a presence of energy in the moment. You know, we're freaking out over giving energy names. You know, it's like a species named energy and then confused itself. You know? Somebody's like, how do I understand energy? It's like, oh yeah, I am being energy right now. Perhaps if I just watch how the moment is being, then the unknown moves the known, right? See, I'll tell you this, but the unknown is not a self. You know, the New Age community, it tries to personify the unknown because literally that's in the instinct of man. There's a reason Voltaire says something in the lines of, if the concept of God doesn't exist, it would be necessary to invent it. Why? Because eventually the human psyche would be like, yo, I came from people, wait a minute, could the universe come from people there? You know, it's like divinity established, right? So it is in some sense the ability of the human being to begin to personify the whole cosmos. Religions, monotheistic religions especially, are incredible works of mysterious art. Do you know that in some sense convey this? You know, for me, when I look at religion, I mean, from the atheistic perspective, a person's like, what is this? You know, what am I reading right now? But I would say, if you have the mind of a scholar or the mind of somebody who's found, like, imagine, you know, a part of an alien space station or a rare artifact, or you've just found something that has, to me, like religious books are like Rubik's cubes, okay? But the Rubik's cube, its movements are based on how the mind of the person accessing the idea engages it, because on some level, ink on a piece of paper doesn't have to mean anything. It is the mind of man that takes that ink in the emptiness of the page and translates it as a meaning in the void, or over the void. Anybody who wants to get enlightened, I am telling you, first ask yourself, who am I? And when you realize the concept of the I is rooted in the inconceivable, then there comes, I would say, the relaxation of lifetimes. Tilopa says, you know, he says something in the lines of like, after, you know, it's like once a person becomes enlightened, it's as if all there is to rest. It's as if you're not, that there is no I ego that is trying to get into salvation, to give the moment a permission to, it's as if, you know what it is, if we consider the ego as an unnatural movement, it's as if the yogis were like, all right, let me put my ego on airplane mode and for a moment watch. When you watch how you're being, you realize what you're being. But when you move as what you're being, you forget, you identify with the movement before the stillness that the space is there, right? So it's as if, imagine somebody's like, what's the, you know, greatest thing that could be said? On some level, sure, it's like a sophisticated lecture, but on another level, right, it is silence. And this is something where it's as if, like, you know, I would say an advanced communicator's eyes looked at the void of the cosmos, and deep down there was a question, you know, can you hear me? Manifestation. You know, really, we are forces in the visible. We are invisible forces in the visible. It's it's as if like we're living at that phase where we're dying to live and we're living to die. That's the cost of life. It's like the cost of entering manifestation is its exit. And when we forget this cost, there comes, I would say, ignorance. We are all here for a little while. All inner, let's say, filtrations of what is acceptable, not acceptable. It's all bullshit. You know, let me tell you, morality, I mean, not morality, I'm not saying like we should indecency is equal to decency, but I am saying on some level, it's like we're all here for a short time, if you compare to how long the 4.5 billion years the earth has been around. And it's as if, what do we do in this short time? What else could the meaning of life be other than that? It's as if there is something of an energetic value and this energy requires to be used, or why was it even here at all? It's as if why do we have a mind if it deserves to be just, hidden? You see, it's like there's an ability, and once the species transcends or surpasses its fear of emptiness, language cannot possess it. Just like Buddha said, the nature of an object is empty, and then when we look at it, we imbue it with a nature. Similarly, the nature of a subject is empty until there is an instantaneous decision of the free will. To wonder about the edge of our eyes is the responsibility, of a lifetime. To wonder about what is going on here. The educational system is being dishonest. The educational system should be like, hey, every human being that will ever go to school, it's like nobody knows how far this system is happening. Like, it's as if like the person's like, I need to see it to believe it, but then they believe that there was an unobservable universe. It's like, how do you measure the unobservable? What do we do with a giant black hole in the middle of space? It's as if the person's like, man, did God stop creating this video game? Like, did the periodic table, it's like, who do we blame, the God or the periodic table? I don't know. Or do we blame the self that is it's as if, when will the unknown be content with the unknown, and when will knowledge realize that it is its own limit? The design of an idea is the outline of the freedom it provides for itself. Imagine somebody's, imagine a child is born, and then, somebody tells that child, the world is made of, cotton candy, right? And imagine that child goes on, gets the most advanced degree in physics, but deep down believes the world is made of cotton candy. It's like ideological possession. So the species has to find a liberation beyond the conflict that ideas bring. What I think Patanjali refers to the Dharma Mega Samadhi, it means, I would say, a reunion. It is the reunion of the lost conscious object-subject bound entity with the presence of how space is unknown. That means, who says an unknown being can't know itself? Its knowledge is unknown. Sometimes I can't tell, if I'm giving this lecture or the whole universe is happening at once. Sometimes it's very difficult to say, who the real podcaster is, Mr.Within or, the universe. It's like the person, is like, wait a minute, am I a microphone for the cosmos to speak to itself? Like, what is this? There is this mystic by the name of Kabir. He says, many know that the drop merges into the ocean, but few know that the ocean merges into the drop. Divination is the realization of how the ocean merges into the drop. The greatest strategy for a species in the void is to wonder about what is the most advanced way it can acknowledge itself. The moment we have advanced ways of acknowledging the human being, a new ethos arises, and so accompanying an advanced self comes an advanced species. Accompanying an advanced species comes an advanced civilization. Accompanying an advanced civilization comes the most advanced force known in the conscious universal cycle. We are technically an army of consciousness in the void, but our leadership is left to our inner visions. So back to the whole moment being divine. It starts off as like a self-seeking paradise, okay? Usually this is, like there is, it's as if the soccer team doesn't go on the field unless it feels it can win. Like players don't play the game until they feel they can win. Any game that allows people to win, right? They in some sense they meet the challenge. The nature of the human mind is not to just survive in a physical environment, but to in some sense discover the power it has to overcome any sort of condition of shape. I was talking about self-sabotage. Man, I have memories in this mind of mine of moments where as if something great was happening, and then I took myself out of the equation because I felt, some part of me felt I was not that. It's imagine the person wondering, am I unlucky, or is there some part of my psyche or shadow self which I haven't acknowledged that is acting as a sort of involuntary application, unnecessary application open in the phone of my mind. Just like a lot of applications you open on your smartphone, it's like they consume the battery. Imagine the person in acknowledging and confronting all the possible ways that the moment is being and happening, right, reaches a certain point where it's as if you reach a point where you close all the applications of the mind hilariously, like poetically, and then when these applications close, the last application to close is the self in the world, and this can't close. So it's as if regardless of how much behind your eyes you feel you have in some sense descended from paradise, okay, regardless of what heavenly abode the mind provides, right, it's as if like honestly, matter is working in accordance to universal forces. When I think about the physical appearance of an advanced civilization, I'm not really I mean, I have my inner visions of it, but I'm not that concerned because nature has its own agenda. When I look at the human being, right, the only reason for a person to really speak in the world is because they can see something else happening in the world. People are conditioned into narratives of self to such a degree that, it's like a bunch of memories can define a person in such a way where they forget who they are. It's as if the person, let's say, failed, the person got embarrassed, the person got broken, the person, let's say, got rejected by the spirit of the moment, right? It's like when you come to that final desolation, when you come to that moment where there's not even the willingness of an energy to be a self, you realize that at the end of the beginning, it's all here. Where we are conscious now is where the greatest events of human beings, the greatest lives of human beings have lived. It's as if on some level a person reads a history book and wonders, why doesn't modernity hear the whispers of the past? The free will is playing a self-selection game, but it doesn't have an acknowledgement with the chessboard, which is the speed of civilization. To me, 8 billion human beings, even myself, I consider myself as a chess piece. The chess master of the greatest chess game of civilization is actually deep down, let's say, behind the eyes of the emotional self, what has been simply accepted. That means whoever wants to know who they truly are, believe it or not, after the most complex realizations, you still have to look at it simply. And when one realizes that the simplest truth of the moment is that we don't have to be anything, which is another way of saying we're nothing. We are the potential of life before its actualization becomes our lifetime. And so it's as if, the person's at first, let's say the young child, or let's say the person's at first like, how am I, moving my body? The person's like, wait a minute, how is my mind happening? And then the person's like, wait a minute, how is my mind and body synchronized to even be happening? And then one realizes the nature of space, and this is the genius of yoga, where through silence and stillness you see beyond the clouds of imagination. Because really what knowledge is what are the real events and what are the abstract levels or additions to the real events. What I realized from self-sabotage was that within every person, I'll just say it, I just noticed that there's so many archetypes, there's so many ways that the mind can see itself move, that really it's as if courage is an ability to understand what there is before doing anything. Like what really a situation is. It's as if, whoever you are listening, put yourself in my shoes, or, you are actually as a member of a species in Civilization 1.0, you are. But it's as if, imagine, it's like, what would be better? The unconscious language, shepherded, humanity, or in some sense, the conscious wielders of the most advanced technologies of the world. It's as if, why has there not been an ethos built upon the innate greatness of the nature of the human being? It's like, how have we, given ourselves such a small story when mankind is the most spectacular event in nature? nature, all the forces, all the lords of karma, all universes, all interdimensional beings, etc., whatever, all should in some sense be honored by the effort of the human species. It's as if there is no time for the cosmos to, in some sense, trap us when there's work of, I would say that it's as if truth is here. It's being it. It is being the whole moment. What greater metaphysics can you find? What greater spirituality can you find? All the simulations of the psyche are present as the whole moment. The whole moment is free. What's inside it is telling itself stories. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I'll end